Hello, everyone, and welcome to Three Coaches, One Topic. And today I'm really, really excited to introduce you to Joan and Paul because we're talking about a big collaboration and a book that's coming out that aspiring coaches and seasoned coaches are going to really love. But before we dive into that, I would like to hand you over to both Joan and Paul so they can introduce themselves and give you a little bit of a background history and where they're dialing in from. So to start off with Joan, we'll go over to you first.
Yes, thank you for having me here online, Donna. It's always nice to talk to you. So I'll be very brief. I'm Joan, dialing in from Cape Town in South Africa, and it's actually storming outside.
Oh, well.
so, yeah, so it's pretty cold too, being in the middle of winter. So, just something short about me. After school, I did chemical engineering, worked at corporates for more than 20 years in different areas: R&D, engineering, sales and marketing, logistics. And eventually I was always interested in psychology, and then later on forensic psychology specifically. So while working at the corporates, I started studying that part-time at a university in United States. Eventually I got my doctor's degree, um, and then I decided to switch, and I started working in that, doing consultations in terms of forensic psychology, assessments, reports, and so on. Some development in terms of treatment approaches, and then after a while, I was approached by the Jay Shetty School, and I got involved in coaching, wrote the program for them, and that's actually where the idea kind of started, on the book. Because although I had a big hand in writing that program, I also supervised students, and I felt that often, and I saw in many of the coaching schools, that certain things were not really missing, but you can't go in depth, and you can't go into the theory and into evidence of coaching. So the idea with the book was to have relatively new coaches come into contact with deeper aspects of coaching that they may have missed in school, and found that they needed that when they started to practice and develop in their practice as well. So, yes, and then I did a supervision accreditation with Association for Coaching, and I've always kind of been into writing. So I've written 3 books before this on a variety of subjects. So, social media, social sciences, forensic psychology, and treatment, mindfulness based treatment as well. So, it's a bit longer than what I anticipated to speak, but
No,
that's
go ahead.
where I come from.
Yeah, you have an
So,
impressive portfolio. And I met you through Jay Shetty's school as well. You weren't my supervisor, but I saw you on some of the webinars and so forth. And then we connected after you left and after I left. And it was great because we were able to sit down and have a really good conversation, which should have been only for like 30 minutes and I think was for about an hour and a half.
yeah, yeah, I know. And before I forget, I just need to add um, that then I started to work with Paul, as well, with Coaching Minds. And that's why I'm very cautious to say all training schools, miss these certain aspects, because I know Coaching Minds, they cover quite a large base of all these aspects in depth.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a great intro to throw over to you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bert. Thank you so much, Donna, for holding the space as always. And Joan, wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for the initiative with this book, for leading the book and all the work you've put in to get us where we are today. So thank you so much, Joan, for that. And that Jay Shetty was where we connected. The Jay Shetty Certification School is where we all first met each other. So really wonderful to have that spark and to continue working with you both. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Paul Smith. So my background, I'm tuned in from Colombia, but I'm from the UK. I spent half my time in Colombia, half the time in the UK. My background is legal, so before I got into coaching, I started chasing a master's degree in law. I worked in a law firm, didn't quite like it, but then I got into kind of regulation and account management in the water industry in the UK for over 5 years. I then ventured out into coaching, started to get my own coaching certification, my own coaching practice. That's when I then started to work with Joan at the J. Shetty Certification School, when I met Donna. And then after that, I left and started to create Coaching Minds, which has been running for the past 3 years, which offers accredited coaching programs, coach training programs across the globe. So we've got a various different programs here at Coaching Minds. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm just really excited to be here with you both and to dive deeper into the book that we've created together.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. And yeah, we all three met and went separate ways and came back together again, which is great. The journey of life. So I'm Donna Burfield, and I started off pretty much my career as a nanny and then into education for 26 years, from Montessori right up to secondary learning support, which I loved. And then I went on and did the course at J. Shetty Certification School. And after that, I wanted to take it further. So I did my accreditation with the ICF and reconnected with Paul, and he showed me around Coaching Minds, which is affiliated with the EMCC, and fell in love with what he's offering with the program and the ethics and it, how deep you go into, the modules. And so I've signed up and gone through the program with Coaching Minds and the EMCC as well. So super excited to see where that leads us. And which brought me on to Joan. Joan contacted me saying about the book, and we had a great conversation. And I didn't know Paul was doing it as well. Found out that he was, and it was just like awesome. So that's what we're here to talk about, because it is being released very soon. And so what we're going to be talking about is from theory to practice, mastering coaching skills with the Coach's Casebook, which is the title of this book. Now, Joan, I would love to throw over to you because you're the co-editor of this, and you have also joined forces with 30 other authors, myself and Paul included, to collect our experiences and expertise and research on different aspects. So would you like to just give us a little synopsis of what this book is all about?
Yep, I think we spoke about it briefly, but I can just add that, or I've already mentioned it briefly, that my idea was initially to have things in the book which you wouldn't expect to learn in a training school.
Yeah.
But much more than that, also, I am a great believer of R&D and of evidence-based practice. So for me, practice need to be connected to a theory. Otherwise, it's going to be meaningless, and it's going to be in the wrong direction, most probably. And of course, the other side is true as well. So theory without practice is equally meaningless.
Yeah.
So I had an idea to get um, writers or coaches together in an edited book like this, where um, every chapter is contributed by somebody else. And I gave everybody the opportunity to choose what they think they are interested and strong in. And I got some great ideas, and we sorted it. Um, And initially, I was going to be the only editor, and very quickly I saw that I actually need a co-editor on board who's a very strong organizer. And that's why I got Christine on board. That's her specialty, even in coaching. Um, because I got 120 positive responses back. And it was very difficult to sort all of that out into a book. I was planning initially to have not more than 20 chapters, and I think we are almost at 40, because I simply could not distill that further, down further. Um, but anyway, I'm getting off topic because I'm very enthusiastic, obviously, about the book. So the idea was to take the chapters per se in a flow, moving from a theory and models and techniques all the way through to practical applications, but every chapter on its own as well. So starting with a literature review, moving from that theory, discussing the models available, and then how to apply it in practice based on the author's own experience and their own case study. So that's basically how it all came together. And just to quickly mention that I spoke to Association for Coaching, and they were very interested to endorse the book. And then I went to their publisher, Kogan Page, who eventually came back, and they said they thought it was a good idea, but they've got a publication process that they need a proposal, fairly comprehensive proposal with all of the information in it, and a summary, and the target audience, and some marketing information, and then they go in front of their board to get a yes or a no. And that process took about 6 months, and then they came back and said yes. And then we started the contract, and I let all of you guys know, and asked you if you're still okay to write the chapter, if you maybe want to write another chapter, like in Paul's case. And then it was kind of all systems go, and we tried to run it like a project, or manage it like a project.
It was a small military operation with so many people, with so many different understandings of time constraints and everything. So hats off to you. I think I would have jumped out the window at that point.
Yeah, it was difficult. I mean, some chapters are quite involved. They're quite technical. They're quite maybe controversial. They sometimes conceptually abstract, like the concept of presence, for instance. How you write a whole chapter about that and make it all the way from theoretical evidence and literature down to a practical application. How do you, as a coach, new or experienced, actually apply this in front of your client?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I haven't read the book yet. I'm looking forward to it. I've seen snippets of some, but we'll get into that in a minute. You can let us all know when and where it's being released. But Paul, I would just like to go over to you. Okay, so you've written what? Is it 2 or 3 chapters?
So 2. I wrote 2 chapters for the book. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So would you like to tell us a little bit about that, and where you got your inspiration from and your research from, and
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I just want to say, Joan, thank you so much. That you have done a huge job here to pull that together is absolutely fantastic. Yourself and Christine to manage 30 people, over 30 chapters. It's just honestly really, really commendable. So thank you so much. Really, really wonderful work. And I look back at mine, and there was part research, but I don't know, you can tell me, Joan. I think mine was the least amount of research that was in there. Obviously there's background experience, so I had one of my first topics was contracting and ethics. So whilst we have the EMCC Global Code of Ethics, with the ICF code, the different codes, we've got the SROs, the work they do, there's not actually a lot of written material on coaching ethics. So it was quite nice for me to have that kind of canvas and to try and think of a way to write it in a way that is going to keep people entertained as well, because ethics is quite a dry subject. So I tried to bring in a bit of humor and a bit of wit to the way that I wrote that chapter. So and it was really, really great feedback from Joan as well. And, there's a few things I had to take out. I got a bit controversial at times. So thank you for spotting that, Joan, and asking me to remove that. When you start to think about ethics and you want to put someone in an ethical dilemma, you've got to be careful with what you use in that context. So thank you for that. And then the second chapter, when Joan, you came back and asked if I wanted to write another one, that was on goal setting. So I extended the SMART model that we all know into something called the SMARTer model, adding excitement and reward in there, and the importance of having that excitement and reward when setting out goals. And I give a few practical tips as well on how to set goals, how to stretch them as well, when to target stretch those goals too, alongside the SMART model. So all about goal setting as a coach, but also how we as coaches set goals, but how we help our clients set goals as well. So those were the two chapters that I wrote.
Yeah, no, great. Looking forward to reading that. And also, you've done in Coaching Minds, I think you did a webinar on smarter or goal setting, and people can check YouTube and they can find that there under Coaching Minds. That was another awesome webinar, full of information and easy tools to use. Okay, so I'll share. I did do a chapter, and mine was on discovery calls, and I actually call them clarity calls. So I really enjoyed that, a bit like you, Paul. I did get a little bit controversial, and I was just, I think it's so important to keep it in, that when coaches do discovery calls, that they share their qualifications and experiences. I think that's very, very important. I loved it. I think it was back at the beginning, Joan, when we were having our discussion and you said, what would you like to write about? And I was just like, oh yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So then when you pulled everybody together, I kind of like had my chapter already done and prepared. I'm very organized. So yes, same as you, Paul, mine comes away with some tips. There's some tables that can help. Since actually writing that chapter on discovery calls, it's funny how when you have certain clients, your approach changes. And I think that's so important, that a lot of times we come up with this idea or a structure of how we're going to deliver certain sessions, but you're coaching the person. So you have to learn to adapt and to be flexible. I just want to throw over, what was some of, especially to you, Joan, were there any case studies that stuck out to you reading the book from the other authors?
I can't really highlight any one of them. I think all the case studies were very good, of course, very relevant, and applied the principles very well. So I can't really, the one that sticks out, and I don't know, I don't think it was a case study, Paul. It was maybe just something that you opened the chapter with and completed it. And I'm looking at one of the endorsements from Jonathan Passmore, and if you look him up, he's one of the eminent authors of coaching books in the world. He starts off by saying, full of witty and insightful examples. And Paul, I immediately thought of your chapter of the ethics, which is exactly what you do to make it interesting and to hold a person's attention. He goes on to say the contributors have brought coaching alive, showcasing the key attributes needed by every coach and the prime issues facing coaches in the 2020s. So I thought that was actually a very good brief summary of the spirit of the book, if I can put it like that. So yeah, um, that's about the best I can answer you on that question. So I think it's best to get the book and read the chapters, and
Yeah.
then every one of the case studies actually stand out.
So where would you like to see these books? Not just on our bookshelves for wannabe aspiring coaches. Is this something that you would like to see in libraries or in other coaching programs? That, or what's your vision?
It's actually a great book to have in a coaching school. Um, there are more and more institutions, or yeah, let's call them educational institutions, that start to offer coaching, like business schools, for instance, and
Yeah.
colleges and universities. Many of them have started to offer coaching as a niche or even a standalone program. Um, I supervise some students of a master's course at the University College of Cork in Ireland. So they are a good example
Mm-hmm.
um, of a university that offers a master's in coaching. Many others do as well, like Oxford Brookes, for instance.
Yeah.
Um, So that's where I see it. I also see it on the bookshelves of coaches, students, new coaches, even executive coaches, although it's not aimed at executive coaching per se. There is an interesting chapter on executive coaching or performance coaching in the book too. Um, so yes, that's what I have in mind for the book. Um,
Yeah.
and even prospective clients, coaching clients, I think could benefit reading the book and get acquainted with the concepts and some self-reflection that they can already do on some of those. For instance, the chapter about the wheel of life,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually a very good exercise, a very good technique to do on your own, or with a coach, to organize what aspects of your life are important, where you are and where you want to be, so that you can get a better direction of where to invest effort.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's also a great discussion point for coaches to go through the book and have those conversations, because you are getting the author's perspective, and we all come with our own journey
Yeah,
and blueprint of what we're taking away from those chapters.
yeah,
So yeah, it's going to be a great conversation starter
yeah,
for
yeah.
us.
And you talked about controversy. Now, I don't mind controversy. I think it's extremely healthy, if approached correctly.
Mm-hmm.
If the author or the person with the opinion has got good reasoning and good justification for their position, and they're willing to debate that, then it's fantastic. Um, Paul, what you mentioned about controversy, there are certain hot topics
Yeah.
which you cannot change a person's mind. So, and that's mostly on the political front, or even due to political posturing. So I'd rather stay away from those aspects. It rarely has anything to do with coaching in any case. You know, it may be um, climate, and you would, or the vaccines, and you're not gonna get a vaccine, an anti-vax person and a pro-vax person ever together. There's just not often not much reasoning involved in it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that approach, and understood the feedback that you give. So just for the benefit of Donna and people tune in, what I tried to do was give a dilemma where something might be legally established, but
Yeah.
ethically or morally perceived incorrect. And I just want to add what Joan was saying there. You know, one thing we want to do at Coaching Minds, and I want to thank every author and Joan itself for pulling this book together, because we always look at to give a book as a gift whenever anybody ever signs up to our program, to our courses. And the book, we've been struggling to find something that really highlights and is comprehensive through the whole aspect of coaching. So the Coach's Casebook is going to be the gift, the part of the package that we give here at Coaching Minds for every coach that enrolls. So Joan, we want to embed that into our academy, into our school, so our coaches, you know, really have that comprehensive understanding. Because I think, you know, it's really great for aspiring coaches or people who are thinking about becoming a coach. It will give you the full understanding of what's entailed, the challenges that you're going to face, the theories and practices that you can learn. So I think it's a really wonderful thing that you've all pulled together. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Maybe I can just highlight some of the chapters and the title. So it starts with an introduction. Ryan Sipes talk about what coaching is and what are some of the misconceptions. And then Marie Fair, who's incidentally my supervisor, she's at Association for Coaching. She wrote about the 3 C's of coaching. So that's a lot to do with ethics as well. When do you make a decision, for instance, to do something or rather not, or to refer? She's written a chapter about supervision. Then there's some chapters on awareness, accountability, about building habits, about coaching presence, the one that I already mentioned. Of course, listening, questioning, that comes out in a couple of chapters as well, going into those techniques pretty deeply, and also in some of the techniques and some of the theories and models that come from other fields like psychology and therapy. Then heart-brain connection, so, and embodiment, so how everything, the mind, the body, and your instinctive reactions, how they all come together. I wrote a chapter on neuroscience-based coaching, so specifically on that. Also on the influence or the confluence of mental health and coaching. And I wrote a chapter on the importance of theory and research in coaching. Then there are 2 chapters on different aspects of mindfulness. One on applying masculine and feminine energy aspects in your coaching practice, which is very a very modern way actually of looking at things in coaching. About blind spots, there's a chapter of a selection of coaching tools, which is very handy to go through and apply. The Wheel of Life as well, visualization, imposter syndrome, and ikigai, also very topical at the moment. So, and ikigai, of course, is a nice way as well to explore the values and the interest and what a person thinks they are good at. There's one on burnout, preventing burnout, overcoming fear, so very application based as well. This is written by Christine, my co-author. So it's a whole process of how you push your boundaries and able to overcome fear, goal setting, Paul has mentioned, discovery call, you've mentioned, coaching ethics, Paul has mentioned already. There's something a little bit controversial. Donna has written a chapter on whether to structure a session or not. And there are pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages, when you should and shouldn't, and which is very interesting. I know many coaches have got either way a preference on how and whether to structure or not, but it's also good to be a little bit flexible in this regard. Then the special niches. This is the final couple of chapters in the book. leadership and executive coaching I mentioned. Then between myself and Christine, we wrote a chapter on coaching what I call difficult personality types. Um, so it's types that may or may not be very coachable, and how to approach those. Maybe you're doing an executive or organizational coaching, and the company has asked you to coach somebody, but they're not really very interested, or they don't see the need to receive coaching. And then the final chapter is empowering women to overcome cultural barriers, which is very important as well, with all the people movement, migration, and so on taking place. So these are basically the chapter titles.
And do you know what I love about this, Joan, is the fact that those that are interested in personal and professional development can pick up this book. And if they are looking to do a certification or accreditation with the schools, they can have a look at their curriculum and see if some of these topics are covered, and ask those questions before signing up and handing over thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, for them to, to really deepen that conversation. Because when you are going to do this as a profession, all these topics that you mentioned need to be understood, need to be discussed. 100%. So this leads me nicely over to you, Paul, because you do that in Coaching Minds, which I love. But also, you've written a few ebooks and collaborated with coaches. What's the process of starting that off? So, and how do you filter out who you're going to work with? What's the criteria?
So for us, it was slightly different because we already had the people lined up. Because what we did with our mini collaboration, it wasn't to the extent of what Joan's put together with a full book. And Cogan Page is an established publishing company that's been around for over 50 years, that is established out there. We've done an ebook together. So ours is very different. It's at a very low level. Okay, we still have the same challenges. We've got to pull coaches together. But for us, it was a little bit easier because what we've done is, for those, we understand that people learn differently. So they learn by watching videos. Some people prefer to learn by audio. Some people prefer to learn by read. So that's why whatever we do at Coaching Minds, we try and convert it into an ebook version, a version that's for those who like to, or prefer to read rather than watch our webinars and our videos. So the collaboration project we did was for our 2022 Global Summit, Redefining Your Success. And we pulled together a lot of the presenters and speakers, the ones that wanted to opt in, pull together chapters from their presentations that they did at that Global Summit. So it was, open for me. It was open to anybody that had done the Global Summit, and those that wanted to do it. It's just, I think the key, and I'm sure Joan will agree with me, is when you've got people together, is deadlines. I honestly think one of the deadlines is key. Setting deadlines. If you leave it too flexible, or say by the end of January or by the end of July, it'll push into August, it'll push into this. But if you give a firm date, we need this by the 28th of July. If not, then we won't be able to publish your chapter. It puts people into that motivation. It puts that people into that. And then you can manage, obviously give you that time to edit and look and review and get back, and then have another set deadline. And I think Joan and Christine did that really well with this project for the Coach's Casebook. They had set deadlines for us, and they pushed us to really reach them. Jen, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on the challenges you had, and if you agree with the deadlines. I think they're really key.
Oh, absolutely. But we had like a 3 or 4 month period. Now, I know these are quite short chapters. They're about 10 printed pages each. Now, I know I can, for instance, write that in 3 or 4 days, or even less. But let's make it 3 days, then that includes the research and everything. Now, I know, because I've asked everybody what their writing experience or research experience was, and I would say 85% had none, absolutely zero. So I knew we had to make use of those full 3 months for many of the contributors. Only a handful had the experience, and I knew, I didn't have to push hard right from the start. So yeah, so we kind of, what I'm trying to say is we kind of try to do it um, in a stepwise process. So making sure that people know if they feel uncomfortable or they don't feel they have the experience already, to start very early so that we have the luxury of going 3 or 4 editing and proofing rounds. And it was still towards the end, a stretch and difficult to get everybody at the finish line on time.
And you didn't leave a man behind. Or woman.
About 90% thanks to Christine, to be honest. As I said before, she's just such a good organizer.
Well, I have to say, I enjoyed when we did our chapter, we handed it in, we got that feedback. I think it was you, Joan, and you, Christine, and Chris that gave me some feedback, and I handed back in. So it's very constructive. It's a great opportunity to dig that little bit deeper and to refine and to up level your writing. So I know some people got a bit nervous getting feedback from you, but I saw that as positive and trying to help us to be better and do better. So yeah,
it needs to be. The only problem is if somebody completely missed the direction of the topic, and those happen here and there, but it was quickly, if you give constructive feedback, as you're saying, it's quickly to just correct course.
Yeah. And what was nice is that you gave people the opportunity that don't have a writing background, but are passionate about their topic or that subject, to be able to step into that zone and explore it, and to get a new life skill as well. So from this, a lot of the coaches, I'm sure, are starting to write articles and blogs and so forth.
Yes, they are actually, and everybody that gave feedback, for them, it was the case, that they are now feel more comfortable and confident in their writing. They enjoyed the process because it's the very first time that they actually see that they should do reading and research and looking at theories that's already out there and evidence, and then how to translate that and use that into their own practices. And a lot of them also said that they saw how to tweak how they're doing stuff to represent those evidence better as well, and that it's more effective than doing it that way. And the reader actually gets all of this work already in a chapter format for them. All the theory and how other people are doing it and why, and how it's worked out for this author, how they have made adjustments and changes, and so that the reader can actually go and try all of this already for themselves.
Yeah, and I think it's also a nice launch pad for people to start whilst you're digging deeper into your topic, is to get curious and do a little bit more research on the other topics that are coming up that we're hearing about, which leads us nicely on to how important do you think ongoing professional development is, and do you think this has sparked that interest for the coaches who have taken part in writing this book? And that goes for both of you.
Well, I can just say that it's non-negotiable. I mean, ongoing professional development, you will, at the rate things are changing now, you will be behind in 6 months' time, probably. So you've got to, even if you don't like reading, listen to audiobooks, go to webinars. And by the way, there will be some spin-offs from this as well. For instance, Association for Coaching has agreed, and I've got forms, and we can, after publication of the book, we can actually start on that, that people can give a webinar on their own chapter, for instance. So that will also then count to professional development, both for the presenter and for the audience.
Great.
Yeah, no, and I second that, Joan. You know, it's non-negotiable. If we aren't growing, if we aren't keeping up to date with times, if we're not continuously learning, then we're going to get stuck. We're going to get lost. We're going to get confused. We're going to get, you know, it's part of the journey, especially it's in every industry, really. You should honestly continuously looking to grow yourself, but even more so as coaches, as the industry starting to shape, as the profession starting to shape, it's even more important. So yeah, 100% continuous professional development is key. Personal development is key. And I just have a curious question for yourself, Joan. It's something I'm really intrigued. It's excited me to pick up the book and find out as well. Is, you know, this is a big collaborative project. Is there anything that you look for when you're doing the editing that kind of tied the same kind of tone, or is it all very, very different for each chapter? I think the question I'm trying to ask is, did you have any set consistency across the book that kept it the same, or did you just leave it to, because obviously we haven't seen each other's chapters, I've only read the feedback on my own, so just a curious question.
No, it's a very good question, and that's why you have author-only books and edited books, if I can put it like that. And of course, the more contributors you have, the more it's going to go to the one side of the spectrum. What I try to do, the tone, obviously, one expects from coaches in a book like this that it should be positive. You know, the only thing that I did initially was told people a rough structure of the chapter. So they should start with a literature review. And I expect, if at all, I mean, some of the chapters, as you mentioned, Paul, do not lean themselves to a lot of literature or existing literature. And both of your chapters are the same. So that's fine. But some chapters are like mindfulness, for instance. You've got to have some literature. What does the experts say? What has been proven? How does it touch on certain areas like neuropsychology, for instance? So I asked for them to start with theory and then have a case study in there, and then apply the concepts and principles that they explain from the theoretical part, how they apply it in practice. So that's basically the only thing that we stipulated. So nothing in terms of style, for instance. Of course, we made it consistent in terms of spelling. In terms of spelling and basic grammar, I mean, it then does not need to be errors, for instance. But no, the tone, I left it up to the contributors themselves. And it actually came out pretty consistent. Just by giving a rough structure, it looks roughly the same, because you start off with theory and then you move through a certain process in the chapter. But it would be interesting, of course, to see what you guys think after receiving and reading the entire book.
I'm really excited to pick up the book and read everyone else's chapters. You know, I can't wait for the release date to come. So
yeah, same here. I'm looking forward to celebrating their chapters and everything that you've pulled together, which leads us nicely, Joan, for you to inform everybody where and when is it being released.
It's being released in ebook format, Kindle format on Amazon on the 3rd of July, as well as in the UK in printed format, so amazon.co.uk, and koganpage.com. So it's released for delivery in the UK, and I would assume Europe as well, on the 3rd of July. On the 25th of July, it is released in printed format on Amazon.com and for delivery to the US.
Fantastic, fantastic. And if people want to find out a little bit more information, can they follow this on LinkedIn, Instagram? Do you have?
They can look on. Sorry, I closed the window by mistake. Fortunately, I'm still here. They can go on Kogan page and Amazon. The book's already loaded on there for pre-order, so they can get some information in there. For updates, they can go onto Instagram. We've got The Coach's Casebook page, specifically dedicated to the book, and on LinkedIn, also The Coach's Casebook. So we post some updates, we post some interesting snippets out of the book, some summaries that the authors have provided us, some quotes, some pictures are there, so they can, and we'll post news as it comes closer to the 3rd and when the launch happens, and then in the US on the 25th as well. So it's both on Instagram and LinkedIn, The Coach's Casebook.
Fantastic. Now, this is pre-recorded, so this is getting released the first Wednesday of July. I think it's the 5th. I might be wrong. But what Joan will do is, if you can give me all those links, I will add this so people can click on it and follow you on Facebook, LinkedIn and
yes, good idea.
And all that. Okay, so we will do that. Now, this is brilliant. I'm very, very excited. So before we close, I would just like to know, are there any tips, tricks that aspiring authors, coaches that would love to start collaborating and writing books, whether it's ebooks or, books like The Coach's Casebook? What tips would you give them?
Well, you mentioned two things. So it's about the writing and about collaborating. Now, those are very different. So collaborating is just all about having an awareness, taking notice of certain people and not being scared to contact someone. I mean, even if it's the biggest expert, like Jonathan Passmore, for instance, people are reluctant to contact anyone. But if you've got a question and it's a good question and it's a valid and short question, of course, and be respectful of people's time, just ask them. Let's say you've got a person that's connected to you on LinkedIn, and I found that's a great place, non-intrusive, to just ask a person a question on there. Then people are really, I'm happy for people to contact me as well about the process of writing and collaborating. And if they need any tips in writing and what topics maybe should make a good book, for instance, they are welcome to contact me as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Paul, do you have any tips and tricks up your sleeve?
So just some words from me, and it's something that I just found out quite recently from a publisher, is that 99% of people who think about writing a book never write a book. It's only 1%. So, be in that 1%. If you've got an idea, start off small, maybe write, it doesn't cost anything to write an ebook, write a short ebook, send it out for free, get feedback on your writing styles, your techniques, search for feedback so you can improve. So start off small and start to build that up. Look for people with similar interests. If you're in the coaching profession, connect with the coaches, the profession you're in, if you want to write and write something together. It kind of shortens the workload. It's the power of collaboration. Here we've got over 30. We all did 1 or 2 chapters each. Some people did a little bit more, but it really cuts the workload down for the authors. A lot more for you, Joan, and Christine as editors, I'm sure, but it cuts it down for the authors. So start off small, look for people who you're aligned with, and get that feedback so you can constantly grow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect.
and utilize, be resilient first of all, because I mean, I contacted many publishers, try to build that network, that you've got some kind of connection with people. It's always better to connect with and contact somebody personal at a publisher than just sending it to editor at, you know, whatever the publisher is. And practice writing. I've been writing now for 10 years in this level, on a research type level, academic level. So it takes a lot of practice for it to come more naturally. And as Paula said, start off by writing shorter things. um, Start to look for people that you can write a chapter for. And even if you may not get paid, there's sort of an unspoken agreement between people that if you write a chapter for somebody else, you can at some stage ask them to do the same for you. So when you again want to write a book and have people contribute chapters, you can go and ask those people if they would be interested too.
I didn't know that. Right, Joan, you're writing a chapter in my next book.
Yes.
Watch this space. No, that's great advice. But also, if you are an inspiring writer and you're a coach and you're looking for this, pick up this book, The Coach's Casebook. Look at the format. Use this as one of your research bases as well. You are going to see it advertised, and you can reach out to the coaches. You can leave comments. You can ask questions. So that's a great way of being curious and, you know, having a great example at your fingertips. So on that note, I would just like to say another huge thank you to both you, Joan and Paul, for joining me today. Another huge congratulations to you, Joan, for completing this mammoth task of the Coach's Casebook. I am super excited about reading it, and I will be leaving my takeaways and reflections on LinkedIn in the Coach's Casebook page. So on that note, thank you both so very, very much. And if anybody has any questions when you're watching the replay, please pop them in. Joan and Paul, I'm sure, are happy to answer them, as I am. And yeah, good luck, get writing and get reading. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you for the
Thank you.
invite.
You're very welcome. Thank you.